Hello, and welcome to this very exciting Eerie Extra of Such a Nightmare Conversations about Horror. I am so excited. I think one of my favorite things to do is these interviews because I get to learn so much. And I'm so excited to be joined by what I have called in my Google Doc, the clown interview, which is going to be an opportunity to get to talk to Jaysen Buterin, Kevin Kangas, and Riekki. Together, they can be seen in, and I'm just going to read the title because it's a little long, The Many Lives of Scary Clowns, Essays on Pennywise, Twisty, the Joker, Krusty, and More, which just came out from McFarland Press. And independently, they are doing all sorts of clown things. So I'm going to start by reading their bios. I personally always feel really weird when someone's reading my bio, so feel free to have that awkward look on your face as I slaughter my way through what you have shared with me. And then we'll jump into the questions, and you can just sort of answer as the spirit so moves you. And I will try to only interrupt a little bit as I fangirl. So up first, as creative director of the straight-jacket-tested, doctor-approved Mad Ones films, from Greensboro, North Carolina, Jaysen Buterin's mission has been to show the unbridled, kaleidoscopic creativity just waiting to be unleashed when the inmates are finally allowed to run the cinematic asylum. He is the writer and director of award-winning indie film fare, such as the Tarantino meets Twilight Zone trilogy, The Gospel According to Booze, Bullets, and Hot Pink Jesus, the on-road thriller Between Hell and a Hard Place, and the sinister stay-at-home horror hits Don't Let the Light In and The Corner. He's currently awaiting the Hollywood studio release of his very first feature-length film, the chlorophobia-courting, clown-killing, thrilling goodness of Kill Giggles, while also prepping a series of screenplays to go into production once the apocalypse finally goes away. Thank you, Jaysen, for joining us. We are also joined by Kevin Kangas, who is the writer and director of 7 feature films, including the cult classic Hunting Humans, the Lionsgate features Fear of Clowns 1 and 2, and the hit anthologies Territory 1 and 2. He's also published a novella about vampires called With Teeth, and a book that's more a love letter to Halloween called Halloween, the Greatest Holiday of All. Thank you so much, Kevin. And finally, we have Ron, who is quickly eating food because he might be the most busy human I have ever met, or as Jaysen speculated, maybe not a human at all. And so I would like to tell you about Riekki, whose books include My Ancestors Are Reindeer Herders and I Am Melting in Extinction, Post-Traumatic, and UP. He co-edited The Many Lives of the Evil Dead, The Many Lives of the Twilight Zone, and Undocumented, and edited The Many Lives of Scary Clowns, which is how we all got together, and The Many Lives of It, which I have the honor of being featured in. Here and Here, which won the Independent Publisher Book Award, and The Way North. His story America, published in Decomp, was turned into a film by MC Squared Film in Romania, winning awards at the Red Rock Film Festival and Treycourt International Film Festival, and was distributed throughout Greece. His story Teeths, which is Pushcart nominated and published in the Santa Barbara Literary Journal, was also turned into a film by the same production company, winning several awards. Riekki has played the title role in the horror film Flesher and received a Crimson Screen Horror Film Fest nomination for Best Actor, and he's also acted in the movie Short Straw. And you can read more about the titles and works in the episode description. So thank you so much, Ron, for joining us. So I have some questions that a couple of them I ask sort of every interview because they're questions I want to know answers to. And I provided you the questions ahead of time, but if you didn't have a chance to look at them, then you can, put your thinking face on and figure out your answers now. Because the first one, I don't know if I could answer, and it is, what are some of your most memorable, formative experiences with horror?
Who wants to go first?
The rule is when you speak first. I think that means you go first.
Yeah, I know. We're waiting for you, dude. You're it.
Well, for me, I'm pretty old. I don't know how old Jaysen is, but I'm pretty old. My formative experiences all sort of involve VHS. My friends and I in high school, I remember like Alien and Nightmare on Elm Street and Fright Night and The Beast Within, and basically all these and other ones that were, are not even on anywhere near the level of those, like really, really bad movies, which I think I'm just sort of trying to replicate in my career, because the thing is, we enjoyed these movies. It didn't matter like how bad they were, as long as they were creative and interesting, and they had some good gore and some nudity and sex. Because we were in high school,
That's
so that
important.
stuff. This is back in the day when there was pre-internet. Oh yeah, pre-internet when you couldn't see nudity anywhere. I mean, it was National Geographic. If you saw like one of those natives topless, you were like, oh my God, that was big. That was big stuff there. So as long as it had that stuff, we loved it. So I think that's sort of what I do now. I just sort of recreate. I'm making my version of these sort of schlocky B movie, horrors that are fun. I'm just trying to entertain, basically. That's why, formative wise, I don't know whether, all those things definitely impacted me and left a mark. But it's really, it's the 80s slashers and 80s horrors that really, really did it for me.
Yeah, I had a lot of I had similar experiences. I mean, I grew up in the backwoods of the back roads of Missouri in the early 80s and stuff. So, I mean, I had two friends in the trailer park. One was the county scenic library, which was like 10 miles away. The other was the video store in town, the one video store in town, which was like 20 miles away. And I mean, every weekend, I would have a huge stack of books and a huge stack of videos. And I mean, it was watching things like an entirely way too young of an age, like Night of the Living Dead. I think I saw it for the first time. It was like 5 or 6. Fucking loved it. Watched Psycho when I was like 7. And made it through. I was cool with it until the very last scene where Anthony Perkins looks up at the end, and it just fucking unhinged me, and I lost my mind. And I fell in love with horror right about that time because I started to get into the Twilight Zone at a very early age, and that had a tremendous influence, I think, on everything I've done creatively, professionally, existentially. So I mean, it was watching these movies, and I remember the first time having these great experiences. The first time I saw The Exorcist, and I mean, just being unnerved, unhinged, excited, palpitated all at the same time. The first time I watched Sleepaway Camp, and you see the ending, and it's like, holy shit, it's a dick. And it's just amazing. It's still one of the best slasher ending horror films that best endings of a slasher horror film to this day, I think. Yeah. So, I mean, it was shocking at the time. So and to be able to have those experiences, watching all the Friday the 13th and stuff. I stuck into the Midwest Mall Theater to see Nightmare on Elm Street in 1984. And I was 8, and I didn't sleep for like 4 days after that. My mom was ready to take me to the doctor. I'm like, I snuck into a scary movie. But it's those experiences like that I guess, I mean, just sort of derailed me and put me on the path, because I wanted to give other people those experiences that I had. The first time watching Alien and just seeing the full reveal of the alien, and just your mind melting in your head, like, I want to do that. I didn't know I had no clue I wanted to be a filmmaker, but I knew I wanted to scare people. I wanted to tell stories. I wanted to be able to, someday give people the same visceral reaction and thrills and chills and stuff like that I got growing up watching these movies. So I was a writer for a long time. I was a columnist. I was a music journalist. I did written novels, all that kind of stuff like that. And then just got into filmmaking and screenwriting, and then just nothing was ever the same after that. So I mean, I don't know if I became a filmmaker or the filmmaker became me. But it's the same thing. It's growing up with that love of videos and watching the things on TV and HBO. Also, I didn't have National Geographic fetish. I was more of a scrambled cable porn kind of guy. Where it's like you don't know if it's like a nipple or like you have no idea what you're looking at, but it's fucking hot. If you look at it long enough, if you squint hard enough, it's like you can see the sailboat, So yeah, it was just growing up with a best friend that was my creative imagination.
And were either of you reading horror at a young age too, or was it mainly just watching?
No, I remember falling in love with Poe, and I still have like my illustrated classics of like Edgar Allan Poe ghost stories that somebody got me, and I mean I've had that for 40 years now, and it still just just amazes me.
Did you read horror?
Yeah, I was reading very, very young, like 8 or 9, I found a box of books in my basement that were my dad's old books, and many of them were sci-fi and fantasy, but there was some horror. So I read all that stuff, and eventually broadened out. I spent a lot of time at the library. I was a bit of a geek, and I read tons of Dean Koontz back then. Nice. I read all sorts of Gary Brandner. I read a lot of strange ones that I wouldn't right now. I couldn't even name, but I actually own still a lot of them in a box in my back, because I tried to keep. At one point, I had a plan where I was going to literally keep every book I ever read, because someday I'd have this massive mansion with a giant, place where I could, study with all these bookshelves. And well, that went away after a while, because I couldn't possibly have kept all the books that I read. But I still have some of them. So, but yeah, I was a
I kept thinking of the Castle and Beauty and the Beast was my future. I don't know where I got that idea. But I recently started reading books by telling myself there's a kid out there that could be the next me, right? That could have these books. And like, I have to like create a whole backstory for the person who's getting my books so that I can give them up. Ron, you appeared and were terrifying in your clown mask.
For me, what do you mean? I went to the bathroom. I just got back. For me, it was my mom had this one book. It was V.C. Andrews. Yes. Something about an attic or something.
Flowers in the attic.
I was so scared of the cover, I couldn't touch the book. And I told her, why are you reading something so creepy looking? But as far as like, what really kicked it in for me was like, definitely Twilight Zone, like Jaysen said. Especially I was at home and It's a Good Life came on and I had no idea what the hell it was. And like when that dude pops out of the Jack in the Box thing, I was like, that's the creepiest thing I've seen in my entire life. I was like, that is brilliant, especially for television, especially like back in the 50s. I was like, that is brilliant. And then for movies, when I saw Gremlins, I remember I got done and I thought it was real. So I thought there was really gremlins in the world. So I was on the lookout for gremlins like crazy. I was for sure they were in my closet. So I was like really watching my closet. And then this is funny, is years later, I was in the military and they showed Gremlins 2 and I was like on my base and I was like, I gotta go see this. And they're like, well, it's not at the regular theater. And I was like, what do you mean? And they're like, you gotta go on this road in the middle of nowhere. And I get there and it was, they showed it in the jungle on the back of a wall. And it was a bunch of Filipino guys all speaking Tagalog and me. And I was, the whole time of that, I had my feet up because I was worried about snakes. And Gremlins 2 was amazing. Like Gremlins 1 and 2. Then I was at a party and Robert Pinsky was there and great Joyce Carol Oates, who are amazing writers. But I just gravitated to the guy. One of the guys, they said, well, what did you do? And he said, well, I wrote Gremlins 2. And I was like, what? And so then I just was like all over that guy. I asked him way too many questions where he was getting sick of me. I can't remember if he was Charles Haas or Christopher Columbus, like not the dude who discovered America, but the other one that wrote Gremlins 2. But oh my God, I was just fanning out on that dude. He was really sick of me because I was just asking him way too many Gremlins questions. And I was like, and I was telling him like, that's the coolest thing. The rest of your life, you get to say you wrote Gremlins 2. And he's like, well, it's not that impressive. I'm like, dude, freaking, you can retire now. You freaking knocked it out of the park. And he was like, I don't know about that.
Never gonna get better than that, man. Give it up now.
That's so funny.
Yeah, like the Key and Peele. You ever see them making fun of Gremlins 2? The Key and Peele. Oh my God! Have you seen that, Jaysen or Kevin?
No.
Oh my God! Do Gremlins 2 Key and Peele.
I'm gonna write a note right now.
Oh my God! Freaking hilarious.
I think my favorite thing about Gremlins 2 is Christopher Lee. He just that made me so happy to see him in that.
I just remember seeing it in the theater, and that part where the film breaks.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was like, "Oh," and we all literally film broke. And then it comes back on. I was like, holy shit, that is genius.
Well, so now I know that Ron is scared of gremlins in real life, right? But what about the rest of you? I mean, and I assume Ron has other things. What scares you in real life? And I promise I'm not like collecting. I always feel like every time I ask that question, people think that I'm like making a list. And I'm like, Jaysen is scared of this. Be sure to remember that. But just, I'm curious to know how the fears that you have in real life play into your filmmaking and writing and what you're doing with horror.
For me, I don't. Oh yeah, go ahead.
I was like, people fucking terrify me. People are the worst monsters. I should have prepared. I should have written it down because Rod Serling has some brilliant quotes about just people and being just the scariest monsters that are out there because they're wearing human suits. So I mean, for me, I think I think the atrocities we can commit towards each other are far more terrifying than anything we could ever commit to celluloid. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't stop trying. So I'm rightly downright properly terrified of clowns. I hate the floppy-footed fuckers. Not a big fan. That's why I made the movie where I wanted to see them die because I felt they had it coming. I've suffered enough. And a lot of people was like, "Oh, it's Pennywise from It" and stuff like that. I was like, "No, I was cool with it. I wasn't born this way. It was a choice I made." After I saw Poltergeist and the clown marionette scene come. Like that did it for me. I was done. cool with everything else in the movie, but that clown marionette scene. And then I ended up like being was at a convention with Vernon Wells like a couple of years ago, and was hanging out with the kid who played Oliver, who was in Poltergeist. It was really weird. Had great stories going back and forth. But I'm terrified. Clowns and people, I think, are the two biggest things. And then I don't understand taxes at all. Those scare me.
So
math
will that be the
frightens
next? Is that the
a
next
lot.
film we can expect? Is like taxes and math?
I'm
Yes,
going to
please.
kill math.
That would
That would be
want it.
super rad.
What about you?
Well, it's funny it's funny he mentions Poltergeist, because when we did the making of for the first Fear of Clowns, we asked everybody in the cast, our interviewer, one of the questions specifically for everybody was, are you afraid of clowns, and where did that first come from? And overwhelmingly, it was the Poltergeist clown. I mean, it was like 90% of the people said that. It was like, wow, that thing really messed a lot of people up.
An entire generation.
I'm
man.
not really. Yeah, it really did. I think that could be why they're so popular. Why they really are so popular. But for me, I don't really fear anything anymore because I'm very old and I expected to be dead by 30. So, I mean, my mortgage sometimes scares me. That's about it. But other than that, I don't really have too many fears. But I still remember what it was like to be frightened. I mean, I still specifically remember. Like you said, you saw Nightmare on Elm Street in the movie theater. I saw it on VHS. And I remember having at my buddy's house. And it was only like 2 blocks away, but I had to walk home, and I literally walked home in the middle of the road because I wanted to make sure if Freddy was coming at me, I'd have a couple feet to start running. So, I mean, I still remember what fear is like. I just don't really have it anymore.
And by the way, Kevin, every time you say that you're really old, I'm just adding 10 years. So right now I have you pegged at like 75, just like a really, so.
It's still low.
146.
So every time you say it, I'm just going to add another 10 years on. And I'm like, I interviewed someone today that's 146. So we're almost there. Good.
There you go. You're close. You're very close.
For me, it's I kind of agree with Jaysen. Like, that's one of the things I missed when I was a kid. I was scared. I thought stuff was real. Like, I thought ghosts were real. I thought like Easter Bunny was real, and all these. I bought all of it, and so like. I lived in this magical world for a while where I was like, there was trolls and all these like crazy, everything was existing. And like, I missed that. That was a fun time. I was scared as hell, but it was really fun. And so now it's not, I'm not afraid of ghosts at all. I'll go, I live in my basement here. We do laundry. I'll go at midnight and it's terrifyingly horrorish down there. And I don't care. I just go, but, people scare the crap out of me. So like as an adult, it's going to be like when I was in Desert Storm, I was afraid then. I worked in the prison system. I had times where I was definitely afraid in the prison system because humans are, I don't trust humans. So, but ghosts aren't going to, ghosts, if they're real, they're nice. They probably just cuddle with us while we sleep.
Well, every time you yawn, a ghost sticks its dick in your mouth. I mean, that's just scientific
Whoa.
fact. Yeah.
Jaysen.
Scientific fact.
I've seen the
forgot to
studies.
ask what the rating is on this podcast. I assume it's.
Oh, no, we market
17.
primarily to kindergartners, so.
Excellent. I'm really big at the Scholastic Fair, by the way.
I teach a class on monsters, and I tell the students straight up front, we're not going to lump humans in there because that makes humans are the problem, right? Like, monsters are not the problem, humans are the problem, so we need to separate it so we know that humans bad, monsters maybe okay. So that's interesting that there's just that consensus. I teach here at Trinity University, so I teach everywhere from like freshmen in college, university.
Like
Yeah,
16
yeah.
to
So
17
18 to
grade.
22-year-olds. Yeah, and the monsters class I teach, it's
gotcha.
the like first class they take when they come to college to like, and we use monsters to talk about things like how does one write an essay and why do you need to write nice emails to your faculty? And, so it's a introduction to college and writing and thinking and all that good stuff. It's a blast.
It sounds like a cool class that I did not have in any of my college at all. I don't know.
That sounds
it's
super
like,
rad.
I feel so lucky to get to teach it. So we're reading, we're starting with Frankenstein. We're going to watch Girl Walks Alone Home at Night. We're watching Shaun of the Dead, Dawn of the Dead. We're reading Victor LaValle's Destroyer. I don't know if you've read that graphic novel. Grady Hendrix's Southern Book Club's Guide to Slaying Vampires. So it's just, we're kind of covering several different monsters, and then they have a project on a different monster. But I do not let them pick humans ever, because I'm like, humans are the worst thing. So it is. And
unfair
I'm like,
advantage.
and they're like, can I please do? And I'm like, never. You have to pick a monster, not a human. So the next question is the only question that has the word clowns in it. Although again, we can put clowns in anywhere. But what is it about the horror genre, and maybe clowns in particular, that seems an ideal fit for the themes and ideas that you're currently drawn to as a horror maker? So what is it about the genre that appeals to you in terms of like either generic conventions? So Kevin, you've already talked about the necessary nudity, right? Or, but I mean, like, what is it that makes the genre a perfect fit for what it is you're wanting to explore in your works right now?
For me, when I first did, I was never afraid of clowns, but I had a friend who was very afraid of them. And that's what gave me the idea. This was back in 2000, roughly, maybe 2001. And there really wasn't much clown stuff out there besides there was It, and then there was some Killjoys. But other than that, there really was no other ones. The only movie with a clown that had really scared me was Clown House. That I thought was kind of freaky. I saw that way before nobody knew who Victor Salva was or anything. So back then,
Killer Clowns from Outer Space.
That didn't scare me much. I just thought it was kind of freaky and fun. Right? I had seen it and I liked it, but it just didn't really scare me. Something about, especially the attic scene in Clown House, that it's just so well shot and well done. And it was like, these guys are, because again, they're just crazy people who had put paint on. So at the time, I had just done Hunting Humans. It was pretty successful. My first movie got wide distribution, was out, Blockbuster, Hollywood Video, all that stuff. And I was looking to essentially, at that point, make something that was more studio friendly, I guess you could say. And so I was thinking, I'd make my own kind of Halloween, because I was a big Carpenter fan, loved Halloween. And I thought, well, you need essentially like a masked villain. Well, a clown is just basically a guy wearing a painted on mask. So that was essentially it didn't really have much to do with themes at that point. At that point, I was writing the script, trying to figure out whether he was a real person or whether, because my original idea was she was painting these pictures of this guy who started stalking her. And I thought, well, it could be supernatural. I don't know, maybe it's some sort of manifestation, but I didn't go that way. I ended up going more realistic. But for me, it was just a way to kind of steal John Carpenter's Halloween theme, essentially, the theme of the strong female protagonist being stalked by, a menacing, mostly silent killer. And from there, it took out, when Lionsgate called me, which was bizarre to get a call from Lionsgate. That's when I was like, wow, clearly I'm onto something here. So I did the sequel. But I mean, I think the fact that one of the reasons why they're so popular is because they've always got that smile on their face, even though they're not really smiling. So there's something artificial or fake about them when you just look right at them. They're wearing a mask to hide who they are, but they're also hiding their intentions. And I think that's why in general, you kind of get a creepy feeling about them when you just on first look. So, but as far as themes and stuff, I never really, clowns I didn't have a clown theme in mind. It's always in service of the story and the theme of the story for me. So.
Ditto.
The end.
Toast, what he said. For me, horror was just, horror has been my lifelong love. I say from the Twilight Zone, the early movies and stuff like that. I grew up, my dad's dad used to have a bar in St. Louis, Missouri, down in the Delmar Loop that Vincent Price used to drink in. So whenever Vinny would be it would be Vinny who would be in the Hammer films and stuff like that. So I grew up watching the Hammer films, the Universal horror. It's I loved being scared. It made me happy to have palpitations, to be scared, to not know what's going to happen next. The first time I saw Exorcist 3 in the theater, and the scene, the jump cut scene, lost my shit. And I still do that every time I watch a movie. To this day, I will still freak the fuck out. I can't wait to show it to my son. It makes me very, very happy. But horror, I don't think I had a choice. Because I wanted to do that to other people. I wanted to come up with that mind fuck of a moment, to where, and the thing I think I love so much about the Twilight Zone, and other masters of that era, Rod Serling was able to take the most seemingly innocuous and simple things and invoke them with this great preternatural power. The camera that takes a picture 10 seconds in advance, Nightmare 20,000 feet, with the Jolly Green Giants kid and William Shatner in the ring. Burgess married, Time Enough at Last, my favorite episode ever, where it's like the one guy, he gets everything he ever wanted in the entire world, and then he breaks his glasses and he can't see. To where, I mean, it's soul crushing, and it's so fucking simple. And to me, that was terrifying. It wasn't graphic, it didn't have graphic nudity. I know, graphic, blood, anything like it didn't have all that. What it had was a graphic story. The most gratuitous thing was the character was Burgess Meredith. So I wanted to try and do that with my first feature, and instead of having a loathing clowns with the fiery passion of 1,000 suns, I didn't want. They were always the serial killer. They were always the monster, the murderers, the spreaders of mayhem. And I wanted to I wanted to do something. I wanted to kill them. I didn't want to glorify. I didn't want to get any more screen time. If I was going to do it, I wanted to see him die. So I started filling composition book after composition book. I've got like an entire box of them. So at my commitment hearing, those should be people's defense exhibit evidence, like A through fucking double Z. Line by line, I mean, so much fucking clown death, but I wanted to be able to do that to where we could sort of eschew some of the more modern horror tropes, to where you're throwing everything at the viewer. I mean, everything gratuitous just to get a rise or a simple reaction for a couple of seconds. I wanted to scare people without them. I wanted to make them think without them realizing they were doing so. To kind of leave a few blanks for people to fill in, because the monster that you see in your head, or the sex scene you see in your head, or whatever like that, is always going to be better than anything we could ever film. And to me, it has to be that give and take, that cat and mouse, that play between the filmmaker and the film watcher. So that's what I wanted to do with Kill Giggles, and I think we got really, really lucky because we worked on it for about 4 years. The first draft of the screenplay was over 300 pages, and I wasn't done yet. But every time I kept telling my DP how long it was, he would pee a little. So I'm like, all right, fine, I'll cut it down. So we cut it down and cut it down and cut it down. And we were able to make something magical to where we have a serial killer of clowns, not a serial killer who dresses up like a clown. So we did some amazing and brilliant things. We were very lucky and got distribution at a much larger level than we thought possible. And then we found out what is involved with Hollywood deliverables and all the fun stuff. And we found out what a QC was and how expensive it is. And we learned a lot of very valuable lessons. So for me, I didn't get involved with horror to kill clowns, but it worked out really, really well, and was very convenient for me, because I've got a beautiful 10-year-old son, and I figured it was a matter of time before he got invited to a birthday party, and Bubbles, the floppy-footed fucker, would be the entertainment du jour. So I could either get over this crippling coulrophobia, or have a very well-rehearsed story about where Jack's daddy disappeared to, when the truth of the matter is I'm locked in the trunk of my car crying hysterically. So I chose ill-advised, self-administered psychotherapy. Excellent. That's my story.
I was going to say I completely agree with Jaysen about, like, my favorite movies are stuff when they don't show the worst part, because my brain makes it so much more worse. And I was thinking about, like, what, as an adult, when are moments where I've gotten scared, and it's almost like never with movies, but one thing is, there was one time I was working at a movie theater, and we would get these movies in early, and the guy said, hey, this hasn't even been released yet. Do you want to take this home with you? So I brought it home, and it was Blair Witch Project, and I didn't know anything about it. So there was none of the advertising. So I took it as a documentary. So I was watching this going, is this real, or is this documentary? Is this fake or real? And so that was one of the best horror experiences of my entire life. I just wish the whole rest of the world got to experience it before it was released, because it was just magical. And at the end, I love that shot with the dude in the corner. I was like, that is so freaking just interesting, because my mind just went crazy with that. Like, I think more directors need to steal that. That's one of the things I liked about, like, my mom was talking about that, because she was a huge horror fan. She loved Alfred Hitchcock because it was what he wasn't showing, that you just start filling it in with you. Yeah.
No, I would call that's my term on set. I wanted to Hitchcock it. So it's like, basically, it's like, something's going to happen. Oh, look, the camera went over here. And now we're back, because we had that with Kill Giggles. We have a scene where it's two people are making out, everything's getting kind of frisky, and then they go into the bedroom and they shut the door. And the distributor people are like, well, you got to fill out all these forms for all the sex and the nudity. How about there is none? Like, what? Like, they're like, there's no sex. Well, they go in and they shut the bedroom door. You don't even show ass? I was like, no, I tried to get a frame of my own ass spliced into the movie, but my editor wouldn't take the picture. They couldn't wrap their minds around the fact that we didn't have nudity in there at all. It's just like, but it's a horror film. I'm like, it's more of a thriller. But I love just Hitchcocking it. Because I mean, that's one of the things I love in Psychos. I mean, it's the shower scene, and it's one of the most pivotal scenes of modern horror cinema. And they don't ever show anything, but it's everything that they don't, and all the little blanks you fill in between the water drops in the shower. And I love that scene.
I feel like you just like saying the word cock.
Well, I mean, who doesn't? You know?
Is that part of it?
I was going to say though about for any screenwriters out there, if you've never read the Psycho screenplay, the original, it is so good. I was at the Writers Guild and it was like an original copy. And I was like, oh, I got to check this out. I sat there, I read the whole thing at the Writers Guild. It had the marks on the sides for notes for it and stuff. That movie, oh my God, that is how you write a screenplay. Like that. And I think more screenwriters need to actually read screenplays, especially really, really good screenplay. Mm-hmm. That is an amazing screenplay.
And Ron, for you, I'm also curious. I mean, you edit like a shit ton of these edited collections, like more than any human should be able to do. What is it about you wanting to build that relationship between these essays and interviews and the like what motivates you to do that with the horror genre?
In all honesty, it's exactly what we're doing right now. I think like Kevin and Jaysen, there's brilliance there. And like just to make a movie at all, that is really freaking hard. So like I kind of love connecting people and just picking their minds and, you know, just hearing about how, you know, like Jaysen, like just saying, like wanting to Hitchcock a scene and stuff. Like I really get into that. And there's something about horror that I find, I mean, I like all genres actually. Like I really do, especially like horror and comedy, and horror comedy is just amazing. But I like, if you can do a really good horror movie, like there's something about that I think you're starting to tap into, like, I don't even know how to word it. It's like almost like the divine. It's almost like spiritual sometimes if you have a really good horror movie. It makes you think about the big questions and I love that. If I go to a really good horror movie, I leave it and you feel a little bit different. You feel like you look at the world a little bit different. So I like collecting those people together. And the same thing with with you too, is like getting people like you and Kevin Wetmore and like these really freaking smart horror scholars, and then like you do this exact same thing where you know, you start looking at these films in ways that I'd be like, oh, I never thought of looking at a film like that. So it's like you take the movie that's already done and hey, here's another angle of how to watch that movie. And I love that. I like smart people. I like creative people, and especially if you're smart and creative, like that's the best.
So
can I just say I'm really jealous of Ron's whole set? Like it looks like it was shot on VHS. And like I thought you were wearing a fucking bear skin or something like that. Like when you first cut it, like I thought you had like the bear hood pulled up over you. I'm like, holy shit, he went shaman.
I just thought every time we'd come back to him, he's going to be like in a new place, new position. Every time we come back,
yeah, by the end of the interview, we should be able to draw a blueprint of your home. Right, that's the goal. How?
Yeah. One of these times, he's going to be like on the toilet. It's going to be pretty embarrassing.
I am right now.
So this next question I ask every interview, because it's the framework that helped me understand how I understood the genre, and it came about because I kept trying to figure out like why, even though I really like Stephen King, I'm not scared by him at the end of the day in the way I'm scared by other people. Some of the scenes are terrifying, obviously the concepts are terrifying, but I kept like wondering, why do I maybe not consider Stephen King horror in the same way I do others? And yeah, and so there's a scholar, and her name is Linda Holland Toll, and she said there's this distinction between what she calls affirmative horror versus disaffirmative. And so we've used this a lot in our podcast. And basically, affirmative horror says that the source of horror is threatening us, it's threatening our social and cultural value systems. But then at the end of the day, the nightmare's removed, the bad guy's removed, and things are good. And you're like, oh, that's interesting, right? So that's a lot of Stephen King. At the end of the day, yes, lots of things blow up, but family is good, love is good, people, except for all the bad people like in Derry, but everyone else is more or less okay. Versus disaffirmative horror, which is where I realized that the things that really disturb me, and I'm thinking of movies, it's a lot of like French horror, but like Martyrs is a good example, or some of Jordan Peele's stuff, where at the end of the day, like we pick up that curtain to look at the body and we realize it's us, right? We realize we are the problem. culturally, socially as humans. So I'm just curious, where would you place your own horror within this framework of affirmative versus disaffirmative? And maybe the question becomes a little bit then, like, what do you think horror should do, whatever that means, right? Like, do you think it should be affirmative or disaffirmative? Do you think it just depends? Where do you place your horror on that spectrum? And which one's over here? Okay.
Yeah, exactly. No. I don't even know how to answer that.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's a super good question, but I mean, it's just, it's so subjective, I think. For me, I guess I'm the affirmative horror. It's not like affirmative action. Yeah. Like it's just, I've got, which gives me a really weird idea for a horror script. Now that I say that out loud. Yeah, I mean, I guess more the disaffirmative. I guess if we had to give it a label, yeah, to be a horror, I just think it should just scare people, thrill people, chill them. And I mean, that has to be different for every single person. I mean, there are those endemic, collective sort of boogeymen, monsters, archetypes out there that are collectively scary. But it's got to be such a singular experience that you did, as filmmakers, you try and figure what's going to either terrify the most people, or for me, a lot of what I do is just it's cinematic catharsis. I mean, I think of the stories that I wanted to see, or what scares me, which being the clowns, that was the easy thing to just pick up and run with, which I guess is disaffirmative, unaffirmative, negative. Yeah, I'm gonna think about that one some more. I looked at that question, but it was just, I've never had that broached during an interview before too. So I mean, that's a very
and it's certainly not the only way. It's just, for me, it like a light bulb went off, right? And I realized, oh yeah, that's why certain things scare me. But I think you're so right also about, different things for different people. I constantly have to tell like my male students why the scene is so terrifying to all of us female students present, and they'll be like, oh, that's interesting. Like, the world you live in is very different from the world I live in.
Just make them watch.
Well, I should, but I don't want them. I want them to be scared about other things, right? Not just.
No, make them watch Teeth, because now I want to see the reaction to that. Because you're like, oh.
Actually, now I keep trying to find a way to put it in to the classes I'm teaching, because I feel like it's time to traumatize a whole bunch of 18-year-old boys. So, what about you, Kevin? What are your thoughts?
I looked at the question too and thought, that's interesting. I don't tend to try to deconstruct my stuff after, mostly when I start with a story, it's got to be very interesting to me, because I know if I'm going to shoot it, it's literally going to take years, because, I ended up writing, directing, editing, pretty much do nearly everything other than act and music, because I don't know anything about either of those two things. But, like my first movie, Hunting Humans, would clearly be affirmative, because it's all about a serial killer who ends up finding out he's stalked by another serial killer. And clearly it's pretty popular because an actual serial killer was caught with it in his truck at one point. So if you Google Hunting Humans, Adam Leroy Lane, you'll find a pretty interesting story where they caught this guy, and in his truck, they found choke wire and masks and knives. So you get to see all these crime scene photos. What's that?
And a copy of your movie.
And then right next to it is a DVD player. And in that DVD player, they've got it opened up, and there's a copy of Hunting Humans.
That's wild.
Sitting in his DVD player. And it's like, and I actually got a letter from him after he was in jail. So I've got that around here. So I got to scan that because some people want to see it, but it's pretty interesting. So, I mean, it's, that was clearly affirmative, and yet Fear of Clowns, I guess that's probably affirmative. I don't know. I mean, I just basically find stories and characters that are interesting to me, and however they fall, as long as the story's interesting to me and explores something that I'm interested. I'd say Hunting Humans was very personal to me because it's probably the closest movie I've said this before, so it's not shocking to anybody. I was a bit of a sociopath in college. So that character was based 90% on me. I didn't kill anybody, if the FBI's listening right now. But other than
Allegedly.
that, all I was doing in college was thinking of ways to kill people and writing them down. I'd figure out, and I did stalk people at times just to see whether I would be able to kill them and get away with it. And in most cases, I probably could have. But so that was very personal. And then Fear of Clowns, like I said, was more of a let's see if I can get a bigger deal and maybe move on to a bigger budget. Because, you know, Hunting Humans was only $24,000 and we shot on film. That was 16 millimeter. So, I mean, the cost of getting that film developed alone was like nearly half the budget just to get it developed and transferred to Beta SP to edit it. So, and then after that, I've, you know, sort of moved on to other stuff that, you know, just whatever ideas basically I find interesting enough to go. But I bet it probably breaks down pretty evenly between affirmative and disaffirmative if you broke it down. But I don't tend to want to deconstruct my stuff because I feel like I'll screw myself up by, you know, as it is, I'm way too self-aware and constantly analyzing everything I do anyway. So I try to back that down because I keep feeling
the neat thing is there's films, I think, like Nightmare on Elm Street, which you could argue is both affirmative or disaffirmative, right? It's affirmative because they're like, let's get rid of the scary, you know, scarred man. But then you realize that they created the scary scarred man, right? So there, I think, are a lot of films that, and your works could very easily fall into that category, right? If you're finding it hard to answer it, it could be because it depends on who's watching it, right? And what they're seeing as the source of horror. Yeah,
and I don't know which one. That's like the question, I guess, that I can't. When I read the question, I thought to myself, you know, once I started looking, I thought, which one scares me more in general, like, or in the past, which one? Because I mean, the people probably ought to, because it's more realistic. And yet the last movie that probably legitimately scared me was The Ring. Like that movie freaked me out in the movie. Like I got chills at my back a number of times in that movie, and that doesn't happen. It just doesn't happen. And that was clearly disaffirmative. So I don't think I could tell you which one is probably the scarier. I guess it just depends on, you know, how it's executed.
Ron, do you have anything you want to add?
And I had the two short stories I got filmed as
yeah.
You know,
what are we
so
looking
dark.
at right here?
I keep trying to figure out where he's at now.
And so like one of them that got the distribution in Greece and the other one got distribution in France, and I was thinking about how because to get distribution, especially for a short film, that's pretty hard to do for our entire country where it's showed in over 100 theaters in France. And I think what I did with both of them that worked so good is like when I submitted it to so I turned one into a screenplay and I submitted it to that company in Romania, and they said something along the lines of it was like the only script that really was saying something. And my first film, it was just making fun of the NRA. It was like NRA people who are just like so hyper vigilant about wanting to so it was just like this ridiculousness about them, like just. Yeah, you'd have to see the movie. No, it's kind of like a black satire or something like that. But then the second film was like really making fun of capitalism. So it was just like the ridiculousness of just one. It was the second one is about this kid who his tooth comes out, and so then he looks underneath the pillow and there's money under the pillow, and then he realizes, oh, so every tooth I get money. So then he goes into his sister's bedroom at night when she's sleeping with a hammer, and then the mother sees him and starts screaming like, what are you doing? And so then they make him go to counseling, and when they bring him to counseling, they drive by a cemetery, and he looks at the cemetery and he starts counting up how many teeth he thinks are in the cemetery, and he realizes that's a lot of money. So then he starts going digging up graves, and like the directors just absolutely loved the commentary that it was making, you know. So I think that's what I was doing really well when I've done well with horror is and in the short stories and stuff that I get paid for, it tends to be like interesting, innovative idea, but it's also saying something about, because our society is just a mess.
Lie.
What? Yeah.
I don't know where you live though. I don't know. Here it's fine.
It's so weird, by the way, that we're doing this because it's just like there's war going on. It's a pandemic. Right now, it's 105 degrees outside. I have no air conditioning. Like, it's just like, it feels like I'm in hell right now in many ways. You know, it's like I'm in the horror movie.
I was telling Kevin before the rest of you got on that, you know, here in San Antonio, it's just always unacceptable, but pretty much every summer, you know, it was 105 the other day with like 40% humidity. And I could do the heat, maybe. I could do the humidity, maybe. But the two together, it is an unacceptable existence. So.
Yeah. That was the fun part about growing up in Missouri, because around summertime, the temperature and the humidity are often the same number. So it'd be like 95 degrees outside, 95% humidity. So like you go outside, you're bam, instantly fucking soaked in sweat.
I mean, so I grew up in Arizona, so everyone would be like, it's just a dry heat. And I never knew what that meant until what they were saying was, at least it doesn't feel like you're wearing a wet washcloth on your mouth. And I'm like, oh, that I understand.
No, that's still bullshit, man. If your shoes melt, if you stand in a fucking parking lot for like 30 seconds and your shoes
I had a
start
pair
to
of
melt,
sunglasses.
hot.
I had a pair of
Dry,
sunglasses
dry,
melt in the car. They just melted. And I was like,
God.
this is not right. And Arizona has scorpions, so Arizona's off the list of just acceptable options. So the next question, I completely stole it from Ron. It's the question that he asked both of you at the end of both your interviews, which again, for those of you listening, can be found in the Mini Lives of Scary Clowns, which is through McFarland Press. And I stole it because it's two questions in one, which is always exciting, but it's also two questions that I thought just worked really nicely as a sort of way to go. And so the questions were, what direction do you think horror movies need to go in the future? Yeah, I know. Pretend I didn't say that. I had a speech impediment when I was little where I couldn't say the letter R. So the fact I chose to love a genre that has 3 R's makes me real sad. So what direction do you think horror movies need to go in the future, and how can the genre be improved?
More nudity.
This is a surprising answer from you, Kevin. I feel unprepared for that based on everything we've talked about.
He wants more tits. He wants more cock. He wants more all-inclusive nudity.
That's right. Whatever. I have girl friends who are always talking about getting more penis in movies.
Well, Jason's offered to have his butt be in a movie, right?
Not what I prefer.
Yeah, no, I mean we could bring in a stunt cock, like stunt cock.
I think you guys actually wanted, and I'm not sure, but I think you had a great answer. Didn't one of you say stop the remakes? Has one of you said that?
That was good.
I honestly can't remember what I said. My brain is mush.
Yeah, but I agree with that. Like
that's my thing. I think the direction it should go in, it needs to go back to original.
I agree.
Between everyone we know, you had mentioned Crimson Screen Horror Film Festival, which is one of my favorite film festivals out there. But I have seen such amazing fucking ideas, shorts, feature length, stuff like that at these film festivals. I mean, that's the direction that it needs to go, because clearly Hollywood is fucking stagnant. If we're doing remakes of reboots of fucking stuff that came out like 5 years ago because they're like, we don't know what else to do. That's bullshit. You can go to any horror film festival, see 5 ideas, and if you take fraction of the budget that you throw at regurgitating something that was shitty when it came out the first time, and you're just going to make it shittier because you're going to cater to everyone, all that stuff, take a fraction of that budget and split it up between 5 filmmakers and watch their entire fucking world change and watch the brilliant shit that they create. Is it going to get the money because it's got so-and-so's tits that was in whatever fucking stupid bullshit video? No. Is it going to be original and scare people or do something or give people a chance to tell more stories? Yes. And that's my answer. That's the direction it needs to go. We need to just get rid of there needs to be a distribution revolution. And we just need to be able to put money back into the original ideas of independent filmmaking, because clearly the system is broken.
I think Blumhouse has done a good job of that quite a bit. They tend to give, that's how the sort of Sinister came about, and Insidious, they gave James Wan not as much money as he was used to working before that, but they gave him all the power and said, do whatever you want.
Go nuts, yeah.
Yeah, he knocked that out of the park. I think when I heard that thing cost like $750,000, I said something I never say, which is, I could not have done better than that with that budget. Like normally I see like a $10 million movie and I go, oh, I could have done better than that with $10 million. $750,000, I could not have made a better movie than Insidious. So I think Blumhouse has done a very good job about doing that, bringing in some filmmakers and letting them do their original stuff. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I agree that the remakes, it's just they're worthless. They're for the most part. I mean, there's the occasional. I thought the Dawn of the Dead remake. Of course, that was a long time ago now. At this point, I thought that was pretty good. And I mean, of course, The Thing, my favorite movie. John Carpenter's The Thing was a remake technically, even though it was quite a reimagining. That was closer to the book than the original. But The Fly remake was great. So I mean, there are some, but you really need to give it to an expert. All the people directing those things, other than I guess Zack Snyder, he's hit or miss here and there. But you got to be really, really talented to knock it out of the park with a remake. Otherwise, I mean, I think it boils down to the script, because James Gunn did the script for that Dawn of the Dead, which is why it was so good, I think.
I would concur.
It really comes down to the writers, I think, at that point.
Right now, where they're making these remakes, by saying, remember how much you loved the original? And you're like, yeah. And they're like, no, forget it. Right? Like, we didn't like it, or we want to completely change it. And it's like, you can't ask someone to both, you can't capitalize both on nostalgia and amnesia at the same time. Right? Like, you can't do that. And that's what the new remakes are doing. Whereas The Thing, even Dawn of the Dead, those weren't trying to say, but forget that crappy, like the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, where they were like, we didn't like the 1984 film, so we're going to draw you in with the same premise, but then we're going to ruin everything. Or, yeah, I mean, they flat out said we didn't like it, right? That we didn't like the original, so we're going to change things. And I'm like, but you're changing all the parts that drew me to the film in the first place. And I think that that's what we've started doing, right? Is we draw people in with nostalgia, and then we're like, but forget everything you loved, because this is going to be different, and then less, right? Or worse. Yeah.
I think that's Hollywood for you, because they do it all the time with like superhero stuff. You know, I owned a comic store for like 17 years, so I was a big comic nerd too. And the fact that like they're like, hey, we love the Hulk, so let's make a movie about him, and then they change everything about it, so it's not the Hulk anymore. And it's like, why did you even option that? You could have just called it something else. It just doesn't make any sense. I think it's just Hollywood and how many fingers got to get in the pot. You know, all the producers got to get in there, and they got to get something in there so they can say, oh, I did that. And then the next one does it, and eventually it just doesn't, you know, represent what they originally had. So,
well, it's weird too. I think it's taken an interesting twist, because a lot of the projects and stuff that I've seen coming out lately, I think the remakes are having an effect on independent filmmakers. I know a ton of people that are doing fan films, and they're telling their own stories set in the world of Jason Voorhees, or in the world of Haddonfield, or a Nightmare on Elm Street, or Evil Dead, or something like that. There's been, to me, almost sort of like an alarming resurgence in just those fan films and stuff like that, which their original ideas set in the story of already existing characters and stuff like that. So it's like,
right, which means they can't market them. They can't technically make money on them, even though I've seen that, and I've had friends do some of those, and I always wonder, you could have taken that money and made something that's yours. Make it, you know, it doesn't have to be Jason. It could be somebody who's a thinly veiled Jason, like my Shivers is a thinly veiled Michael Myers. You can make your own, and then you could go ahead and make some money and perhaps get a following. But as it is, I think they're going for it because they've got an already established audience for Jason, so they know they might have, bigger, but you'll make no money from it. So I think in the end, it's just a waste of time.
Because fanfic, it does that all the time, right? But at least when you're writing fan fiction, it's not costing hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands of dollars. Like, I can't imagine putting money in that much money and knowing that you can't sell it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, a lot of times they'll crowdfund them and things like that to get their money. And then they'll do some shifty things where they, technically they shouldn't even be able to crowdfund money, because, how much of that is profit versus how much they always say in the fine print, all of this money goes to making this. We're not making any profit, but we all know that's a lie. So I think eventually the studios may crack down on that stuff, but I don't know. I always, especially like I had a friend who did a Batman fan film, and I'm like, I don't know why you're wasting your time and all that money when you can't do anything with this other than put it up on YouTube.
That's what I think.
That's true. I mean, those stories. I'm sorry, right? I mean, they can have a really sort of a different sort of life on the film festival circuit. And at that point, I mean, it's not about, you're not going to get those DVD sales and residuals and streaming and stuff like that. But I mean, it, especially for like the superhero stuff, that a lot of the multi-fandom conventions and stuff tend to have their own either cinematic showcase or film festival component and stuff like that. So it's like you get a chance to tap into a built-in audience at a prime venue where you're streamlining that nerdvana into one auditorium setting. But yeah, I mean, it again almost sort of depends on what your goals are as a filmmaker. It's like, are you out for riches and glory? Because
I was going to say, no one who wants money should go into academia, publishing, or filmmaking, right?
Getting that PhD in philosophy, and you just wait for the Indeed applications to start rolling out. But if you just want to tell stories and make something and go horribly in debt, and then tell another story and go even dive deeper into debt, which is probably the most frightening thing about independent filmmaking. That the fanfic, the fan films and stuff, I can see the appeal. But for me, I know so many brilliant people out there of all walks and sizes and shapes and lifestyles and everything else like that have amazing stories to tell, and I would love to just see a fraction of the bullshit funds that Hollywood spends on Jesus, promotion Twitter accounts. I don't fucking know. But to be able to take that and just divulge and just divert that to some independent filmmakers would be amazing. So maybe that's what we can do with this episode, and the massive sales of the book that are going to spike from clearly this show. We'll be able to establish, maybe we can establish our own scholarship at your school, and then we'll I got a good feeling.
I was going to say though that I do know some people now who they're rich. Like they did do something that hit. You know what I mean? Like they just wrote something that got big. You know what I mean? I know quite a few people now, but that's just because I'm working with all these talented people in the industry, and sooner or later people hit. There's people I know now, they're millionaires. You know what I mean? Like they did something that just was big. Quite a few, not tons, but I could name like 8 names right now of people who did it. And I knew them like 10, 20, 25 years ago. But one of the things I want to say is this, like for me, what's really critical is you need people who, it's kind of like, you know, like with Jaysen, when you won the Texas Legend Award, you've been plugging away if you're getting a Legend Award, you know what I mean, for the Austin Revolution Film Festival. And that's what you need is you need film directors like Kevin, where you're making multiple films. Because the more, it's like, the way I'll reward this is when I was on the set of Flesher, John Johnson film,
oh, John Johnson's the best.
Yeah, he's awesome.
So fucking handsome. Like devilish handsome. And it's like covered in tattoos and just rugged and just like he's hot as fuck, and it's like you have weird feelings because like he's everything. Yeah, it's odd.
But I was on the set and we were talking about, I wonder how good this movie's going to turn out. And I remember the guy who was the special effects, who's like, can't remember his name right now. I think Sean Crumbles, who's amazing. He said something about, well, I'm not really so concerned about this film. I want to see what he does in his next film. And I was like, what do you mean? And he was like, when you're making a film, you learn stuff and it makes your next film better. So he was already looking ahead to the next film. I thought that was brilliant because like the more films you do, Jaysen, the more films you do, Kevin, you're just going to get better. And like, if I look at my favorite directors, that happens. Like back in the day, I remember I saw Paul Thomas Anderson's Hard Eight. That's a good freaking solid film. Hard Eight, that's his early stuff. And I remember when it first came out, I was like, that's a good movie. But he had to keep making them to get into Boogie Nights and Magnolia. And so that's, I think for me, is I get concerned about people who they do the movie, it's really, really hard, but it's so exhausting they don't do more. And it's when you go and then you do the movie, you learn from it. And then the other thing that Jaysen talked about that's so critical, when you go to Crimson Screen Horror Film Festival, you watch film after film after film after film after film, and that gives you ideas of that doesn't work, that's not good, that's amazing, that's interesting, and then it gives you ideas, and then you network. So you meet act. That's how I got cast in 2 movies. I got cast to act in. Was going to the Crimson Scene because I'm freakishly tall, and so like they just came up to me and like I just don't look human, so they're like, you're perfect for horror. But like that's what you want to do is networking, connecting, and in learning, and then just keep trying. I think that's what's critical.
Man, you got to put that in your biography.
Crimson Screen has the
human.
That's gorgeous.
That's awesome.
One of the coolest fucking awards ever.
Dude, I've been nominated like 9 times. I've never won. I lose every time.
So Ron, just like when Kevin says he's, ancient, so he's like 146. I mean, are you like 7'2"? Because that's the height I've decided you are. Like, yeah, like how tall are you? Tall.
I'm 8'3". Watch.
Without anything for us to measure against.
You see that? You see that?
I do. I believe it, dude. You're the tallest.
Yeah. The more you talk, the less I'm convinced that you are human. So, and Kevin's clearly a vampire. Jaysen, I haven't quite figured out what you are, but it's also not human. So, yeah.
I haven't figured out what I am yet either. It's okay.
Svengoolie.
When I looked at Jaysen's pictures.
I usually get the guy from the Black Crows or like Rob Zombie or there's like Jeebus.
Oh, freaking Rob Zombie.
I thought you were Adrian Brody from your pictures when I saw him online with Adrian Brody with the whole goatee thing.
Yes, after this he's going to go be in The Pianist and just make a couple films.
He did because he was just they did a version of oh god, was it not the Tommyknockers? He was on a show on Epix, Chapel.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, that was good.
Which was super rad.
Yeah, it was good.
I hope it gets another season.
Write that down because I have so much free time.
Yeah, no, yeah. Well, it's hot because it was Yeah, good people.
Netflix is starting to kill it. Did you watch that show From?
I didn't see that one, but they did. They ran
really good.
I think they're still running Get Shorty, but they did because Chris
Get
O'Donnell
Shorty
from
was
the
really
IT
good.
crowd was they in the series of it. And it was just fucking brilliant.
You get a chance, watch From. It's very good.
Cool.
It's sort of like Salem's Lot meets what else? Like Under the Dome meets Salem's Lot. It's like with a little bit of Lost to it because it's actually from some of the writers of Lost. So
okay, yeah, we don't want to mention Under the Dome because that story gives me just
because it's creepy, or
like we're like watching the show and it's like
the show was terrible. The book was the book was interesting for a while, and then just sort of the ending.
Yeah, the first 1,000 pages, I'm like, cool. The second 1,000
but who's
pages,
going to be that editor that's going to go up to Stephen King and be like, sorry, sir, you need to edit? I mean, no one's going to be that person. So they're just like, thanks for all of it.
Yeah.
Ron would
have no...
You had a Zoom meeting with that editor? That'd just be creepy as fuck.
Yeah.
You have no
Ron's freakishly tall, so Stephen King's
and Ron will make you work with another editor who will be like, this is garbage. Please fix it immediately. And then I'm like, okay, notes taken. I will fix the garbage.
He's got his human mouthpiece, and then he just feeds them the lines. That's how the symbiosis works.
So we have already decided, and the horror industry has listened, that we're going to let remakes kind of die the death they need to deserve. And we're going to start supporting more indie filmmakers so that we can be having people make more films more frequently so that they can continue improving their craft. And by the way, Ron, thank you for that, because I think I require my students to make a film, and they make it by the very end of the semester, and I think I'm going to make them make 2 films now. They're going to hate me, so I have to think about that. But at the end, they're like, we didn't know how much it was going to involve, and I'm like, I warned you all semester. So I think I'm going to have them do 2 so that they can get better at it. Yeah, this is good. So thank you, Ron.
Nice. We'll do the 12 air because it's like no one. The first movie they make, their first film is going to suck on holy ass. And then the second one is gonna suck too. And then if you get to by 3 or 4, but nobody can ever unmake the film that you made. Like no one can ever. They can't undo that. It will exist forever. And that's as a storyteller. That's the whole fucking point, is to be remembered for something, for the words that you were able to pull together. And that's doing 2 films. I mean, I think it's fantastic. Let's make a judging thing out of it. We'll be judges for it right now. We'll give them like a fucking walk-on role in some death.
And it's much easier and affordable now. I mean, they've all got cameras in their pockets now. And the new, for a while there, I laughed at the iPhones and things like that because they were terrible. People are like, I'll make a movie with this iPhone 5. Yeah. It's going to look terrible. And but now, man, these new ones are.
Yeah, they're always like, where do we get a camera? And I'm like, in your pocket. It's better than anything the school could buy, right? That they would want to lend to students anyway.
Yeah, just tell me it's better than the camera I made Fear of Clowns 1 and 2 on.
I need to start saying it's in your pocket, but that does sound a little creepy. So
you're like, what can I make a movie with?
I'm like,
what's in your pocket?
That's what you shall use. Is there anything else that you think horror needs to be doing or thinking about to keep going in the direction it deserves to go?
I just think many filmmakers need to spend more time writing, or they just need to get a writer for their stuff. I mean, the problem for a lot of the things I watch are that just the scripts are bad. So it doesn't matter how well directed they are. You can't really fix a bad script. You can try in the editing room, but as Fear of Clowns 1 proved, you can't fix it in the editing room. Fear of Clowns 1 turned out to be pretty bad.
Can't fix everything in post.
No, I thought I could because I was a pretty good editor at that point. And no, I couldn't do it. I was pretty bummed for a while. And then Lionsgate called, and I was like, well, you want to buy this piece of shit? All right, great. So then I made Fear of Clowns 2, which I liked a lot better. Fear of Clowns 2 was a little closer to what I had intended. But yeah. So I think it's just the writing. I mean, I basically went to directing from writing. I was writing since I was like 12 years old. So I'd been writing for a long time, and I was a script reader for an agency out in LA for 2 years. So, I mean, honestly, I got to learn a lot more from bad screenplays than I did from good. Like I read a lot of the good professional screenplays, but I really learned a lot from the bad ones. You're like, oh my God, I'm doing what this guy's doing. It's making me be like, this script's terrible. So you start changing things and stuff like that. But I think that, either learn how to write well or just, get a script that's good and then, do that.
By the way, as you're telling all the things you do, you would have to be 146. You're like, I spent 17 years doing this and 2 years doing that. And I'm like, yeah.
I know, right? That math doesn't add up.
Ron, what were you going to say?
Yeah. You guys are still trying to figure out.
I'm just settling at 146. Jaysen was right.
You got one of those fucking Harry Potter fidget spinners that wiggles time around, don't you?
Yeah, I was going to ask, do you guys know the blood list?
The blacklist or the blood list?
The blood list.
Must be a take on the blacklist, right? The blacklist.
Yeah, it's a blacklist with horror, and it's brilliant. And I think an untapped thing for film directors is a lot of these film festivals have screenwriting competitions where the winners have really kick-ass scripts that just sit there. So if I was a director, I would probably go to those film festivals and I would check out those winners or those finalists for those screenplay competitions, because there's some really good ones that are just sitting out there because there's screenwriters who can't direct, you know what I mean? So then, but they're good writers, and I think that gets.
There's tons of them. I actually had a guy out of the blue send me a script for Territory 3. You know, I've made 1 and 2, and actually 3 is what I'm currently on. I finished the script, but he had sent me this script, and normally I don't read this stuff, but the guy was a pretty vocal fan online and stuff, and I thought, all right, I'll take a look at it. But I let him know I'm not going to use any of this stuff. Whatever's in this, I'm not going to use it because I've already got Territory 3 mapped out. And I read it, and it's actually pretty good. I was like, there's a segment in it that I told him, I said, if I run short of a segment, cool. I will use this. I will, contact you and license this from you so I can put it in the movie. So, I mean, there's definitely a lot of, good writers out there. It's just a matter of looking for them, realizing, number one, you're not that good, or the script that you've written is not that good, and then going out and finding one that is. So, and
the other thing I was going to recommend is, because this happened to me, this company in India had got a read-up play of mine I had published a long time ago, and then they did a film option of it to shoot it, and then COVID broke out, so I'm not sure where they're standing with that right now. But what I'm finding that film companies are doing now is, like, if you're interested in making good horror films, read like those top horror journals and then find the short stories, and you're like, that's freaking brilliant. I could turn that to a movie. I would, again, if I was a horror film director, I'd be reading those like Strange Horizons and like those really good horror publications out there, looking for anything that really seems like it could translate into a film, because I think you could do some pretty cool stuff with that, because a lot of times, especially with short stories, a really solid short story lends itself pretty well to a film. Sometimes novels are harder because of the length, but a solid short story, like freaking, what's the Will Smith movie that he's
I Am Legend?
The Legend, is that what it's called?
I Am Legend.
Oh, that book is, that short story that it's based on.
William Matheson.
Yeah, that short story.
It's a full book.
Killer.
It's a full book. It's just a short book, but it's a full book.
But that short story, if writers out there haven't read that story, that freaking story, especially when the neighbor is calling his name. Oh my God. I remember I was reading that and I was like freaking in Florida, just like my parents' spare room. And I was like, that is writing. That was so good.
Well, the funny part is that, I've gotten a lot more into the horror fiction side lately, because I have a good buddy, Ronald Malfi, who's a horror writer, and I've been hanging out with that crowd a lot. And there are so many of them who are begging to get stuff made. Like, they've literally come to me and said, listen, if you want to make something of mine, just say the word. Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of these people just want to see their stuff made, and a lot of them are really, really talented writers. Yeah. So just, start looking around, start reading some of the books from a lot of these, well-known and not well-known horror writers. If they're not actively getting stuff optioned right, you have a great shot at saying, hey, could I take a whack at that book? Give me a 2-year option to turn this into a script and then direct it, and see what happens.
Horror Obsessed Writing and Literature Society, HOWLS is the acronym, and I mean they're producing their own anthologies, and they're getting some big names to do introductions, and I mean that whole community is one of the most active community of writers I've ever been a part of. And I mean, you could just spend a lifetime just right there, right? And it's just amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I think I just want to come back to the film festival aspect. Is something that Ron had said. I think to me, and Crimson Screen Horror, Austin Revolution, Nightmares Film Festival. Cape Fear. Stranger Days. There are so many. You can't even start naming them because you're going to forget somebody who looks like an asshole. Film festivals, the horror, especially for the horror, are one of the most amazing places to actually do social networking, because I've been at Crimson Screen, and you can watch people, and maybe there's a writer who meets a director, maybe there's an actor who meets an effects person or something like that, but you can watch these people meet one year, and then you come back the next year and they've got the project that they made in that time, and they made something new, and they keep making stuff. But I've seen these wonderful relationships blossom from people, people of different backgrounds who would never, not likely be in a room together at the same time. But they come together for a film festival. So, and anybody watching, anybody listening and stuff, if you want to write, but and not everyone, there are very few people and souls in this world who can write and direct and edit and do all of those things well. I got in it too. I got into filmmaking as a writer, and the directors I was working with, they just didn't get it. Also, I put way too much direction in my script. So I was like, here's all the visual details because this is how I see it in my head. And apparently directors were like, I want to put my vision on it. I'm like, fuck your vision. So I started directing. And I tried I'm going to edit too. I'm like, editing's hard. We're going back to writing and directing. I mean, you can't wear all the hats. You can't know one person is an island. Some people can be peninsulas, other people can be penises. But the thing about film festivals is, I mean, it's one of those wonderful places where you're going to have the most kindred spirits you will ever likely be in a small, dark room with. And just talk to somebody. And film festivals, you can watch some of the most amazing stuff. Like Rod said, you can get ideas, you can get jealous, you can get inspired, you can see what works, you can see what doesn't, and then you go outside. And a lot of times, there's in between blocks, whatever like that, there's after parties, there's other things going on where you can meet the people. So like if you want to, and I highly recommend, I implore you, please find a film festival, find a horror film festival somewhere in your area, and just go. And even if you don't know anybody in the festival, you don't know anything about it, just go and pay the $10, $20 for a day and just watch. I implore you, vote for me. No, I implore you, go to film festivals. You have no idea who you will be able to meet. You might, if you see a film, you'll be able to meet the filmmakers there. If you want to get into filmmaking and you don't even know what you want to do yet, talk to the people there, talk to the filmmakers, talk to the film watchers, because you have no idea the world that you could change just by telling somebody that you like their movie, or just saying, thanks, or I love this, or this is cool. It's one of the magical parts of movie making that I love, and I love so much. And being able to go to those film festivals and just having that showcase for your work that otherwise wouldn't get the attention, aside from the 6 YouTube hits, and 4 of which are your mom. To be able to screen it in venues and stuff like that, to be able to have that because we've seen Carolina Fear Fest here in Raleigh. We screened Kill Giggles at the Alamo Draft House, and it was like, holy, my film, there's my name. It's like, holy crap, it's really big on that screen. And it's one of those mind blowing moments where I flash back to sneaking into Nightmare on Elm Street and seeing Wes Craven's name on screen. It's like, I want to do that. I want that. I had no idea at the time. I went through a lot of trials and tribulations, and yet here we are. So it's like, film festivals are just one of the best places for actual literal social networking. And it's something that doesn't get a whole lot of attention, because everyone's like, oh, is it like Cannes, or is it like Sundance? No, because that's all bullshit marketing and a bunch of promotions that you have to pay to get into. Things like Crimson Screen, things like Austin Revolution, Nightmares Film Festival. Those are, I mean, it's the living, beating, bleeding heart of independent film, especially horror film. And it's something that just deserves as much attention as we can give it.
That's what happened to me at Crimson Screen. Steve Balderson had this movie. It was Helltown. It was just bizarre. And I went up to him. I had to talk to him because it was interesting. And then I said, just for the hell of it, I had a copy of my book. It was in my car, and I said, I got to give this copy of my book. So I give him a copy of my book, and not thinking he's going to read it. And then he gave me a link to Firecracker. I don't know if you guys have seen that movie. Do you know Firecracker? That's a great movie. Roger Ebert had one on his best films of the year list. It's just really well done. It stars Mike Patton from Faith No More, and yeah, and he's great in it. And then Amanda Black, who's she was an Oscar nominee. So so I saw the movie and I was like, this is so incredible. And then he was like, I think you'd be good to be in one of my movies, because they want me to be a killer typically. And so like he cast me in that, and I got to act. Joe Pantoliano was there from Sopranos and The Matrix, and he's an amazing actor. And then the same thing happened with John Johnson. It wasn't that I saw something he wrote and I loved it. It was this one woman had this script that was just beautiful. And me and him both walked up to tell this director how much we love each other. I mean, how much we love the film. But sorry, because I'm jumping ahead. Because she said,
Freudian slip.
Well, no, because what she said was, she goes, "Are you guys brothers?" And so I said, I don't know why I did this, but I said, "Yeah," because we look nothing alike. And then John goes, "Yeah, how's Dad doing?" And then we just started improvising like that we were brothers. And then because we improv so well and work so well together, that's when he started going, you know what, it would be good to work with you because we just naturally clicked. We naturally did just love each other, you know? And so that's how he, and then the thing was, then he cast me the title character, the title role in his movie. And so like that, I always wanted to play the lead in a movie, but I was like, how in the hell do you ever actually do that? And it just fell in my lap by going to film festivals. And I think what Jason's talking about is, like, especially for anybody out there who's like really new to this, that's how you break in nowadays. To get into Hollywood itself is so freaking impossible that you have to get to know people on a one-on-one level, you know. And it's just that simple of me and John just connecting of when they said, "Are you brother?" And I was like, "Yeah." And then we just riffed, and in that connection, that's what you're looking for, is people that you connect with. I think like Jaysen and Kevin, you can probably talk about this because you probably have actors that you work with, just like, you know, Paul Thomas Anderson with, you know, his whole stream, John C. Reilly, and people that he's, you know, William H. Macy. You got to have people like when they're in something and you're like, I'm spending the rest of my life with you. You are going to be in so much stuff that I write. You know what I mean? I think you actually talked about some of those, but you're like, Jaysen, like, I can't remember the actress that you just fell in love with, and you're like, you were just so excited that they were in your movie. Who was that? There's Felicia Rose.
Well, it was Felissa Rose. I mean, I got lucky because I had met her at, again, we're dropping major nods, but at Crimson Screen. Met Felissa Rose from Sleepaway Camp there, and I was just like, you know, I'm like, you blew my fucking mind. I'm like, you had a fantastic penis. I'm like, she's like, it wasn't mine. I'm like, I don't care. And it, you know, she was at Crimson Screen, and she ended up doing, I sat in the back with her. I think we were doing fireball shots while she basically MST3K'd Sleepaway Camp, and it was fucking amazing. I ended up hanging out a weekend. It was just, she's like, you know, she's like, I love you, short film. Like, you ever have anything? We should work together sometime. It's like, oh yeah, that'd be great. And then I hit her up like 6 months later. I'm like, remember when you said that thing? I've got this idea. And she ended up doing a voiceover for The Corner. And then I had to do something with her again. So I wrote a role for her in Kill Giggles. And then she committed to doing that. She's like, well, you should put Vernon Wells in the movie. I'm like, of course I should put Vernon Wells in the movie. She's like, well, I'll send a text real quick. I'm like, oh, of course you'll send a text. And then she did. I'm like, holy shit. Wow. And then I had like an hour and a half long conversation with Vernon Wells. I'm just like, I'm flashing back to like, I mean, Road Warrior and Mad Max and Weird Science. It was like, holy fuck. And then Judith today, I had met her on the set of a director by the name of Matt Cloud, who was doing a movie called Night of the Living Dead Genesis. And I got to be in a scene with Judith O'Day where I was a guard at a mental institution. I walk her from point A to point B. I'm like, I came and got Barbara. I'm like, holy fuck. But I ended up just sort of keeping friends with her. So I mean, these people that I grew up watching religiously, and some of my most favorite horror movies, favorite movies of ever. And then I get to work with them, and they're reciting words that came out of my head. And it's just fucking mind blowing because you want to go back and you want to call like 8-year-old you and be like, look, I know things suck in 1984, but they're going to get so much fucking better. So, I mean, that's what has to be one of the most rewarding things about filmmaking, about horror filmmaking. I mean, just being able to have those dreams come true, even while you're living your worst nightmare, being on a set surrounded by clowns.
It's like me, like I can't believe from my Evil Dead book, I got to know Betsy Baker really well. She went on book tour with me, and I consider her a friend now. And like that's from Evil Dead, and I have her phone number. I'm just like, that's just insane. It's so cool to connect with people like that. Hey, Kevin, who is it that you keep working with?
I use Johnny Alonso a lot. I don't know if you know who he is. He's done 1.5 million things. He was on like One Tree Hill and Dawson's Creek for a while, and Gotham. And he's been in a lot of things, but he's local to Baltimore as well as LA. He's got a place, you know, so he goes basically coast to coast. I've used him a lot. Tom Proctor, who was in Halloween 5 and Guardians of the Galaxy and a million other, like True Detective. I mean, you turn on the TV and you'll see him somewhere. Mm-hmm. He was in Bounty and Fear of Clowns 2. Lately, it's mostly a good friend of mine, Richard Cutting, who was in the Territory movies, and he was the lead in Garden of Eden. You know, basically, when you find somebody that you have a really good rapport with, and especially if if once they get to like sort of know your shorthand, it's much easier to work with them. You don't have to take as much time trying to get them to understand the character or understand, your interpretation of the character, because they know you and they know how you work and they get to know your characters. So I think that's one of the reasons. I haven't really, the funny part, the Felissa Rose Vernon Wells thing, it's like, are they just like a package deal? Because I went to Blood on the Beach convention because I know Tiffany Shepis. And so Tiffany Shepis and Felissa Rose were hanging out, and then Vernon came over, and Tiffany's like, "Oh, hey, Vernon, this is Kevin. He makes movies." And I feel Vernon's big hands on my shoulder. And he's like, "Oh, how come you haven't put me in one of your movies?" And I was like, just sort of kidding. I was like, I thought you were dead. And there was like this brief moment of shot. Like he looked around and then he started laughing. And from there on, it was hysterical. And like, we all went out to dinner and we hung out that whole weekend. And, that Felissa Rose got us into the VIP party, even though I was not there as a guest. So it was a lot of fun, but it's funny how, you hear all these names and stuff, but I'd love to work with, some of those people. And I have had talks with some of them, and like Kelly Maroney was, I was talking to her about being in one movie that I couldn't get the budget for it. And I wouldn't do it for as cheap as the budget I had gotten at that point. I was like, I'd just rather not do it than half-ass it. So
you're in Baltimore, you said?
I'm very close to Baltimore, yeah.
You should check out for a writer, Rafael Averis. He's a buddy of mine. He wrote for The Wire on HBO. He is so freaking talented. Hardcore Baltimore guy. You can friend him on Facebook and just tell him, hey, Ron was saying we should connect with each other. That guy writes his ass off. I mean, anybody who wrote for the friggin' Wire, he's got talent. He's hardcore Baltimore guy. Nice. So I'd love to connect to.
Cool.
That's so cool. So
that's the funny part. I know John Johnson too. We are talking about the same John Johnson, right?
Yeah.
We did. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I know him. I've met him quite a few times and hung out with him. So I mean, he's a nice guy.
Yeah.
Hot wife too. I mean, what's up with that?
Yeah, she's nice too. She won at the Crimson Screen. She won. We got both got nominated. She won Best Actress. She was so pumped. She was so happy.
She's so friendly, so nice. It's crazy. I don't know how he got that lucky.
They both look really hot throwing axes too. Because at one time at Crimson Screen, like we all got super drunk and like, let's go across the street to the axe throwing bar. We're like, yeah. So we all went to, and I think John had like an axe in each hand. He's like, oh
my gosh,
it was hot.
Did you ever accidentally call?
Apparently, I need to start going to this festival. All the fun
Crimson
stuff
Screen is just amazing. Like it's one of my favorite ever. I mean, it's just the venue, the filmmakers, the film, like it's just one of those where everything coalesces together into a wonderful weekend. Like I can't say enough nice things about it.
Well, I think this segues nicely into the last question, because I know that you all are busy and I've kept you over, but I just want to know what's next. What should people be marking on their calendar to look out for in the next 1 to, in Kevin's case, 146 years?
Well, you see, I'm so old, I'm actually contemplating retirement at this point. But I would like to get Territory 3 done, because it would wrap up the story that I set up. There's quite a few setups in 1 and 2 that lead to 3 that are now just dangling. So I'd love to finish that. And it would also be the first trilogy I've ever done. But I just don't know whether it's going to happen, because some of the actors from the first movie have disappeared, and I kind of need them, and I don't really want to recast the role, so I don't know whether I'm going to do that or not, or whether I'm just going to, write novels and things like that are, I can do by myself in the comfort of my home, rather than go out in the woods and kill myself in 100-degree weather, getting bit by
bugs.
Exactly. Oh, they're bad. So I don't really know, other than Territory 3. I don't have necessarily anything other than that. And I'm always writing. So I write all the time.
For me, I got the Many Lives of the Twilight Zones coming out this year, and with McFarland, and then I did the Many Lives of the Purge, which is going to come out next year, which was really cool because there's tons to say about America, politics, and stuff with the Purge series. And then me and Kevin Wetmore are contracted for a book with University of Edinburgh Press, but we're both really freaking busy, so it's trying to get that thing done has been hard. So it's just like really hard to get both our schedules together, but we're looking to do that. And then I have Michigan State University Press. I got an anthology coming out that's on Indigenous writing that's set to come out in the fall. That Gordon Henry's been the head editor on that. And then I got a poetry book coming out with Middle West Press. That's military poems that I wrote about Desert Storm and stuff like that. And then I got other stuff too. I'm forgetting, but yeah, I got lots going on. And then I should probably show this thing because this is what.
Holy shit, he does have electricity. Okay.
But we only get to see it for the book.
Yeah. But go ahead, Jaysen.
And back out.
I asked you guys at the beginning what you guys are working on because I was actually legitimately curious. So, yeah, what are you working on?
Yeah, so Jaysen.
For me, we've been in a weird sort of creative limbo with Kill Giggles, having distribution and going through QC and basically just waiting for a release date from Hollywood. So it's hard to get those creative wheels going again when the last thing I did isn't technically released. Like, it doesn't feel done yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm way too OCD, but like, I'm going to start all this other shit. And like, I wanted to get the other thing fucking done. But the screenplay demons are screaming in my head again. So there was one I wrote a short called The Blue-Eyed Boy and Mr. Death, which is based off of a line of one of my favorite E. Cummings poems. And it's not a horror movie at all. It's probably the most personal, dramatic thing I think I've ever written. It has a sort of a slight surreal fantasy sort of aspect to it at the very end. I was going to work with Adam Hampton, who's an amazing actor out of Oklahoma, and then also Vernon Wells, as well as my dear friend Patrick G. Keenan, who is the Sean Bean of North Carolina independent film. Dies and everything. Fantastic fellow. But due to the fickle fates of the film gods, that we were supposed to shoot at the end of this month, and we had to postpone that. So the next thing I want to do is I wrote a short film called Cub. One of my dear brothers, Jesse Knight, did a short called Werewolf Hunters, that had a fun little run on the film festival circuit. And we were filming that, and my son came to the set, and he's like, "Well, I'm going to go with you to the werewolf movie." He's like, "I'm going to be the wolf." I'm like, "But it's already Uncle Michael. Like, we fit fangs, and prosthetics and shit. It's expensive." And then like his bottom lip started to puff out a little bit. I'm like, "Fine, I'll write you a werewolf script, and you can be the werewolf." He's like, "Okay," because the girl he's been in love with since second grade apparently has a werewolf thing. So I'm like, "We'll make the movie. You can be the wolf. You'll be the star." He's like, "Yeah." So I think we're gonna maybe try and shoot that. Hopefully. We're in North Carolina, so we'll probably have maybe like 2 days in between really fucking hot and really fucking cold that we're gonna shoot this short film in that one weekend. And then it's just I've got like 6 fucking screenplays I need to finish in various stages. One is called Death Calf, which is going to be sort of a sequel to a short called Lunch Ladies, which did everything. It won all the awards at all the film festivals ever. Written by Clarissa Jacobson, which is one of the best horror shorts I've ever seen. And again, I would have never been introduced to that film or met my friend Clarissa if it wasn't for the Nightmares Film Festival. So I want to be able to do that. And then the other thing I'm sort of getting for is I want to do an anthology, but I want to do it right because I've seen so many anthologies just fall apart. So that's one of the ideas I'm kicking around in. And then the other one I want to do is since I did the movie Where We Killed Clowns, now I'm going to do the movie Where We Kill Cancer because no one's ever done that yet. And I figure if I write it the right way, it can be the best fucking revenge film ever told. So we're going to do that. So that's going to be the next big thing is we're going to fucking kill cancer. And it's going to be a hoot. And it's going to be a riot, and I can't wait. And then there's like, it's just, there's so much shit I want to do, but it's just, I sort of need that last little bit of closure on Kill Giggles, especially when crowdsourcing and begging people for money you don't deserve. It's hard. So yeah, there's lots of stories to tell. I just need the film gods to let me tell them.
Oh, this is exciting.
And money, lots of fucking money.
Yeah, I was gonna say
out there, Ron, all your millionaire friends, holy fuck, do I have screenplays for them?
Yeah, I have a new life goal, and it is to one day be the person that Ron is talking about when he says, "No, I have friends who are very wealthy," and I'm like, I'm one of them. You know, that's my new life goal. So
what are you working
I need
on?
money because I got to option some of the shit Ron's putting out. So I mean, I got it. It's gonna cost a pretty penny.
Yeah.
What are you working on, Catherine?
That's a good question. So I will have the essay coming out in your mini lives of the Purge, and
It's gonna be a good one.
Yeah, I'm really excited about that. And then I have a couple other things for the podcast that are coming out. So my job is in faculty development has been a lot while we've been through the pandemic, right? Because like I had faculty that were like, "But what is the internet?" And I was like, "Okay, let's start there, and then we'll talk about how to make classes be online." So and then I had other faculty that were like, "We have this," but but it was just me and a lot of faculty. So I've had to kind of take a step away from some of the creative stuff But I just finished, and it will be again next year, so anyone can play. It's something called Monster Mayhem, and it's a horror themed bracket style tournament. And we did the math. We have an algorithm built, and so we seeded them just like March Madness, but based on the data that we scraped from films and books. And so, you know, I don't think we have a clown category for next year, but we could easily have a clown category in the future. And I could reach out to you and ask you for some data on those films. But that was the biggest undertaking of my life. So I don't want to have a project for like 3 months. Because I was like, what if I learned? Yeah, I was like, what if I learned how to build a website and algorithms? And you know, and I'm like, I'm a humanities person. What am I doing? So I'm taking a break, Ron. That's what I'm doing for the next 3 months.
I build websites. I do that shit.
Yeah, I wish I hadn't. I just wish I had just stopped at some point, but it was fun while and so that's yeah.
You want to know something freaky?
I do.
I've never seen a Purge movie.
The first one
they're gonna take away my horror cool kid
Really?
part. I've never seen a Purge movie. I've never seen an Insidious movie.
Wow.
Oh, that's good too. Oh my god, those are good movies.
I know, like I hear it, but it's just like
Insidious is badass.
I didn't see the Nightmare on Elm Street remake. I saw the Friday the 13th remake, and it was like, all right, so don't steal Jason's weed.
Yeah.
I mean, that just
was
like,
the
like
lesson.
don't steal anyone's weed.
Yeah.
Put it this way, compared to that Nightmare on Elm Street remake, the Friday the 13th was like amazing.
Oh
Nightmare on
yeah.
Elm Street,
Yeah.
that remake was so fucking bad. The
So
Friday the
bad.
13th one, I don't mind watching the Friday the 13th one. It's okay. It's, you know, what it is. It's got a couple cool kills. It's got some nudity. But that Nightmare on Elm Street, man, when they started hinting that maybe Freddy was okay, maybe he wasn't a child molester, and maybe they killed him, you know, mistakenly. I was like,
Yeah.
what, we're
Yeah.
fucking turning him into a good guy? What is going on?
Yeah.
For me, I think it was just the character itself, because I mean, with Freddy Krueger, watching everything I did in the 80s, like that is always inherently intrinsically tied to Robert Englund.
Yeah.
I mean, the
Yes.
vocal, just the voice, the vocal inflections, the mannerisms, the body language, everything. You know, Michael Myers didn't talk except for whatever the fuck Rob Zombie was singing at the end of Halloween 2. It was like, let's have dialogue. No. Put your wife on the horse for another fucking 20 minutes and shoot that. But with Michael, with Jason, you didn't. There was that silent killer aspect, and that was the endearing part. But with Freddy, I mean, it was just so charming while he was gutting you with fucking syringe gloves. That, I mean, you can't. That lightning's never going to get caught in the bottle twice, you know.
Well, and I think I read that the actor who played Freddy in the remake was like, I don't like what Robert Englund did, and I was like, I'm sorry, what? You don't like the character?
It's Jackie Earl Haley.
Yeah,
he's a really good actor. I don't know whether he said that or not. He's a really good actor, but I mean, for me, the big thing of it was that, number one, he was way too short for that role. Like every time they should have cast a lot of short kids if they were going to do that. Because the kids
should have cast fucking 9 foot Ron, dude.
The kids were taller than Freddy, and it was like, what? This just seemed weird.
Freddy's not a hobbit. What the fuck?
Exactly.
That's so funny. Well, that's a good note to end on.
There we go. Freddy's not a hobbit.
Yeah.
Since we're wrapping,
challenge, folks are going to get mad at me.
Since we're wrapping up, I just wanted to say, like, all three of you, I sent you an email out of the blue. You didn't know who the hell I was, and all of you were crazy enough to respond. So I just want to say thank you for being a part of these anthologies I put together, especially because I had people who were like, I don't know who the hell you are, and just like don't even respond. Whereas you guys were crazy enough to say, hey, yeah, no, that sounds fun, I'll do that. And you guys were great interviews, like Kevin and Jaysen, both of you. I as a matter of fact, this is funny. As soon as the book came out, the first thing I did was I reread those interviews because I love those interviews with you guys.
Yeah, they're good.
And then Katie, thank you for you know for this and for, I love how we get to connect like this. So I'm glad that you guys all know each other and we're all a big family now.
Well, you introduced me to Kevin Wetmore, who was someone that I'd like cited in my dissertation, and I was like, he's a real person. I get to, you know, and so, you know, it's just neat when you're realizing that you're getting to meet the people that you've been learning from, right? So, and Jaysen, Kevin, since we had the interview be, you know, like 2 days, like we had 2 days notice, I haven't watched your films yet, but I'm very excited to do it. It's on my list of things to do when I take vacation in a couple of weeks. So
drop me a line and tell me which ones you hated and which ones you liked.
I'll be like, dear Kevin, here are my notes, you know, to just
not enough nudity.
I don't
That's
get
right.
offended at it. I don't get offended at anything. So if you hate the movie, I mean, especially like in the case of Fair Clowns, I mean, I tend to agree with the people who are like, they bag on it and expect me to defend it. I'm like, nah, you're right.
Oh, that's so sad. But that's okay. In your next, 146 years, you
But that takes the wind out of their
That's it.
sails for the critique. But
yeah,
no,
I would
completely
imagine
agree.
that's
Yeah.
true.
Well, the funny thing is, women tend to like Fair of Clowns 1 more than the other movies. I'm not sure,
Oh.
because it tends to be more. It's a little more suspenseful and not
Mm.
really much of a horror movie. There's a bit of a mystery suspense thing going, but
Hmm.
if you go in looking for like a hardcore horror movie, no, you're gonna be real disappointed.
But in that one, it's all dong. Like it's nothing but dick, and he's like,
I don't have any dong in any of my movies yet. I don't think.
Okay.
Maybe the next one. Maybe Territory 3. I'll put a dong.
See, I mean, I'm pretty sure Territory 3.
thoughts and prayers.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna hit stop on the record. As creative director of the straitjacket tested, Doctor Approved Mad Ones films from Greensboro, North Carolina, Jaysen Buterin's mission has been to show the unbridled, kaleidoscopic creativity just waiting to be unleashed when the inmates are finally allowed to run the cinematic asylum. He's the writer and director of award-winning indie film fare such as the Tarantino meets Twilight Zone trilogy, The Gospel According to Booze, Bullets, and Hot Pink Jesus, the on-the-road thriller Between Hell and a Hard Place, and the sinister stay-at-home horror hits Don't Let the Light In and The Corner. He's currently awaiting the Hollywood studio release of his very first feature-length film, the chlorophobia, courting, clown-killing, thrilling goodness of Kill Gibbles. And he's also prepping a series of screenplays to go into production once the apocalypse finally goes away. Kevin Kangas is the writer and director of 7 feature films, including the cult classic Hunting Humans, the Lionsgate features Fear of Clowns 1 and 2, and the hit anthologies Terror-tory 1 and 2. He's also published a novella about vampires called With Teeth, and a book that's more a love letter to Halloween called Halloween, the Greatest Holiday of All. Ron Riekki's books include My Ancestors Are Reindeer Herders, and I Am Melting in Extinction from Apprentice House Press, Post-Traumatic from Hoot and Waddle, and UP from Ghost Road Press. Riekki co-edited The Many Lives of the Evil Dead and The Many Lives of the Twilight Zone, both from McFarland, as well as Undocumented from Michigan State University Press. He also edited The Many Lives of Scary Clowns and The Many Lives of It from McFarland, Here and Here from MSU Press, an independent publisher book award winner, and The Way North from Wayne State University Press, a Michigan notable book. His story, America, published in DCOMP, was turned into a film by MC Squared Film in Romania, winning awards at the Red Rock Film Festival and Trey Court International Film Festival, and it was distributed throughout Greece. His story, Teeths, Pushcart nominated and published in Santa Barbara Literary Journal, was turned into a film by the same production company, winning awards at the Dracula Film Festival, Rockport Film Festival, and Trey Court International Film Festival, and it was screened at over 100 theaters in France. Riekki played the title role in the horror film Flesher, directed by John Johnson, receiving a Crimson Screen Horror Film Fest nomination for Best Actor in a Feature Film. He also acted in the movie Short Straw, directed by Stephen Balderson, starring Joe Pantoliano and Sarah Clark.